Now, here in Nigeria, controversy is trailing President Tinubu's appointment of Olukoyede as the new chairman of Nigeria's anti-graft agency, EFCC, with many suggesting that he is not qualified for the job. Analysts argue that Olukoyede's appointment is in gross violation of the EFCC Act, but the presidency disagrees. Arise News correspondent Omo reports.
President Bola Tinubu on Thursday announced the appointment of Olukoyede, a trained lawyer and forensic expert, as the new chairman of Nigeria's anti-graft agency, EFCC. But the appointment has continued to generate controversy, with many arguing that it was done in gross violation of Section 2, Subsection 3 of the EFCC Act establishing the anti-graft agency. It stipulates that a chairman of the commission must be a serving or retired member of any government security or law enforcement agency, not below the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police or equivalent, and should possess not less than 15 years experience. Olukoyede served as the Chief of Staff to former Chairman of EFCC Ibrahim Magu between 2016 and 2018. He was subsequently appointed as the Secretary of EFCC in 2018, a position he held until 2020, when he was suspended by President Muhammadu Buhari alongside Magu and some other EFCC officials. As such, critics claim he has no requisite experience in security or law enforcement agency prior to this time. Alongside Olukoyede, the presidency also announced the appointment of Mohammed Hamajoda as the Secretary of the EFCC on a renewable term of 5 years. Taken to his verified ex-social media handle, Daniel Bwala, a former campaign spokesman to PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar, describes Olukoyede's appointment to the EFCC chairmanship position as illegal and unlawful, arguing that it runs contrary to the provisions of Section 2 of the EFCC Act. He went further to say that Olukoyede is just a legal practitioner who has never worked for any security or law enforcement agency, and that he doesn't have 15 years cognate experience as a law enforcement officer, stressing that his private legal practice years cannot be equated to the rank in law enforcement. But the presidency has kicked back at critics, replying that Olukoyede's appointment broke no law. Frederick Nwabufo, a senior special assistant on public engagement to President Bola Tinubu, in a tweet on his X account, states that the appointment meets all legal requirements. The provision of Section 2, Subsection 1, Subparagraph 3 of the EFCC Act did not state the nature of the experience which a person is required to possess. It's similar or alike for 15 years. This implies that such cognate experience is presumed to be that of the work or functions of the EFCC acquired anywhere, since the EFCC Act did not state the specific place where it must be acquired. It is also unambiguous by the provision of subsection 3 that once a person possessed 15 years of such cognate, that is, similar or alike experience, then he has satisfied the provision of subsection 3 of Section 21A of the EFCC Act. The presidential aide went ahead to state that Mr. Olukoyede is not only a trained regulatory compliance officer, he is a specialist in fraud management, compliance management, and corporate intelligence. He has more than 22 years of leadership expertise as a fraud examiner. He has led investigations and civil litigation of fraud and financial crimes in international development projects. Olukoyede's appointment comes months after former EFCC boss Abdulrasheed Bawa was suspended as the EFCC chairman. He has since been arrested and kept in custody with no trial. In the federal government's latest statement on Thursday, it claimed that Bawa had resigned his appointment, though no letter was made public to that effect, either by the presidency or Bawa. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Joining us now to discuss the controversy over the appointment of Olukoyede as chairman for EFCC and setting the agenda for the new leadership is Liberal Oshoma, a lawyer. Good to have you on Newsday as always.
My pleasure.
All right, so what's wrong with having a private legal practitioner as EFCC chairman, and is there a law forbidding this? We've been hearing about the Section 2 of EFCC Acts of paragraph 3, I believe.
First and foremost, we need to understand that there is nothing wrong in anybody aspiring into any office.
Okay.
But there are laws that lay down the qualification and the requirement and how to fill that vacuum. So when we understand that, and anything outside of that law, then there is a problem. And before I go into this, I must also first say that if we criticize Buhari's nepotistic appointments and then gloss over Tinubu's nepotistic appointment also, it means that we owe Buhari an apology. Because Buhari's appointment, we all agree, were nepotistic. Tinubu's own is following, if not worse, in the same path. But that said, I also want us to first and foremost look at Section 7 before we go into cognate experience. Section 7 of the EFCC Act. Section 7 of the EFCC Act actually states, permit me to read, the commission shall, see, it spells out, if you go to, no, Section 8, it says the secretary shall be the head of the secretariat of the commission, shall be responsible for the administration of the secretariat and the keeping of the books and record of the commission. That is the job of the secretary of the commission. So I know why I'm going there, because Olukoyede was a secretary for 2 years of the commission. So if you now go to Section 2, talks about that the executive chairman shall be a serving or retired member of the government security or law enforcement agency, not below the rank of an assistant commissioner of police or equivalent, and possesses not less than 15 years cognate experience. What is cognate? Related experience. There is already a law that says this is the rank you must attain. And in law, there's what we call a rule of interpretation. When specific laws are mentioned, and there is a general rule, that general rule must derive from the specific law. There is already a specific law in paragraph 2 that says it must be somebody of a rank of an assistant commissioner of police. So the related experience means experience in the security areas, 15-year security organization, or in the equivalent, either government, not private now, security and government security. So in this case, this young man was made chief of staff to the chairman. Who is a chief of staff? Chief of staff is head of administration of an office. So are we saying now that if you say you count those years he was chief of staff to the chairman, that means the cleaner to the chairman also will be qualified? That means the driver to the chairman, after all, is a driver to the chairman. So you cannot begin to talk about cognate experience. That is not the experience that the EFCC Establishment Act intended. And so we shouldn't be standing law on its head by saying that it's private legal practice. I'm a private legal practitioner that been practicing law for close to 30 years. Does that mean that I have cognate experience in security matters? The answer is no. So we can't begin to talk about your private legal practice years in Yemi Oshibanjo and Co. as the experience in security or security-related matters. The answer is a complete no. And I think we should learn to interpret laws the way they are. This idea of standing law in its head, at the end of the day, the precedent we set today, just like the bad precedent that was set by Buhari that others are following today. Unfortunately for me, this government, they knew everything wrong with Nigeria when they were in opposition. And they told us how Nigeria would work better if given the opportunity. But unfortunately, they're in government today and they're even doing worse. None of them is talking about all the ideas that they promoted. Fiscal federalism, unbundling of the country, amendment of the electoral acts to remove the powers of presumption of regularity in favor of INEC and all of these things. And yet, you want to make simple appointment as simple as the EFCC chairman. You still want to stand law on its head. And then somebody, rather than apologize to Nigeria and say, well, we didn't look at it this way, we're sorry, so we will, redo this. You're trying to force it down the throat of Nigeria and they're trying to stand law on its head. It shouldn't be allowed to stand. And seriously, this is not... Now when I hear some people talk about this same act, and I ask, is it the same EFCC act that we're all reading? Or is there a different word for cognate, distinct from the one that they are talking about? When it's as if you're banding cognate, as if cognate is a word that stands on its own. It doesn't have meaning in Nigeria. Cognate, we all know, means related. So do you have related experience? 15 years related experience in government, not private now, government security matters. Government security organization. So let's even assume that your years of legal practice can also, be added to this cognate experience. Was this years of legal practice in government security organization?
Although they did mention the issue of forensics briefly.
Is it up to 15 years? No. We're talking about you joined the EFCC as chief of staff in 2016 and left in 2022 as chief of staff to a chairman. So that means, like I said, does it mean that the driver of a chairman also would be taking that experience as cognate? After all, they are in EFCC. I think this idea really would demoralize the EFCC workers. Because now you say the chairman has resigned. Is he at gunpoint? Is it voluntarily? Nobody has heard anything from him since he was arrested. I'm not a fan of EFCC chairman because they are also guilty of the same thing we're talking about. Holding people, incommunicado, most times without trial, you get orders, and then to even assess your clients in custody. But the right thing must be done. For the fact that it is EFCC chairman today, it can be somebody else tomorrow. All of the EFCC chairmen that had come before now, it is the same thing, one way or the other. You know why? Because the powers of the EFCC are so enormous, especially the powers to manage assets recovered. And that's where the banana peel is. When you domicile the power to manage assets recovered in the hands of the chairman, it's not accountable to anybody. There's a board that hardly sits. So you're going to, any accusation levied against the EFCC chairman will certainly come from that angle. And that's why the allegations against Farida, allegations against Lamode, if you remember, I said he mismanaged assets recovered to the tune of, was it $1 billion or so? Magu, the same thing. And the last one was assets in Port Harcourt and in Lagos. So why are we not also looking at tweaking the EFCC Act to remove these powers of managing assets from the powers of the EFCC chairman? Otherwise, you're starting an appointment, on a flawed legal procedure. So what's the guarantee that this same chairman will not go in the way of the others?
Oh, that's a very great question that we'll have to wait until, I guess, time will tell. Now, according to a statement from the presidency, Mr. Olukoyede satisfied every legal detail to be appointed as chairman, and I'm wondering, for those opposed to this appointment, is this something that should be settled in the law court, or is it a matter that the National Assembly can, decide?
First and foremost, let me go to the area of National Assembly. You have a Senate president, a Senate that's a distinct arm of government. You have the Senate president on the day of, was it the day of inauguration or one of those days, he had a cap that has the insignia of the president. How do you expect such a Senate president to check the powers, the excess of the powers of the president, where you are showing to the whole world that you're going to be a rubber stamp Senate president? And so you're kowtowing already. You want to be seen in the garb of Mr. President. So on that note, already, it shows that the Senate will just be a rubber stamp. So the Senate will not be able to solve this crisis, on needless crisis that the presidency and that has created for themselves. And also, this attitude of go to court, the government should not allow it continue, because they're already gaining, popularity, with that slogan, go to court if you don't like it. This same government, when they were in opposition, consistently, even the issue of INEC chairman, they insisted that the president waste panel report, the president should not be the one to appoint INEC chairman and all of those things. Now, people are pointing out your errors. You are insisting that it is right and that whoever does not like it should go to court. Certainly, some of us will go to court. We'll approach the court for interpretation of this section. But that will also show that you are a government that does not listen, that you are not capable of practicing what you have preached consistently. So the best thing to do, the court of public opinion, you have the court of law and you have the court of public opinion. There are two courts now in Nigeria. So the court of public opinion is saying, looking at the law establishing the EFCC and the requirement for appointing this chairman, Mr. President, you are wrong here. And I know the court of law, even though we say the windmill of justice grinds slowly but surely, but we also forget that justice delayed is justice denied. And so that's why, for those of us who are lawyers, that's the fear that you take matters like this to court and in the next 10 years, it's still in court and it becomes an academic exercise because the occupant of that office would have been showed the exit door. So that's why it behoves on us most times now to raise our voice and let government listen. That look, it's not everything, it's not every time that you want people to go to court and, embarrass or seek, because seeking interpretation for something that is this clear, for me, is an embarrassment to either both the Attorney General and all the lawyers who are in government, because it is clear. But when you now begin to say, no, you need to give it another interpretation, indirectly what you are telling the people is that, look, you can do and undo. But like, to answer your question, yes, the court in most cases usually does not even need to resolve this because it is clear. But if the government insists that, typical of them, we must go to court, yes, the court will go because that's the business of lawyers and the court. But whether we would have the time to resolve it timeously is another thing before the EFCC chairman, whoever, however, is shown the exit door, because I can tell you certainly that with the act, certainly whoever comes is going to fall on that same banana peel and they will pass through the same exit door, and which is not helpful for our country.
Well, Liberals, we've said so much about the laws and, of course, Section 2 of the Agencies Act, but in hindsight, do you think the President have discretion to appoint the EFCC chairman, despite the EFCC Act, regarding the Section 2, as it were?
In Nigeria, when the law gives a discretionary power to appoint, Interpretation Act says you also have power to fire. But in this case, there is no discretion. There's no discretion whatsoever. In some cases, the law would even prescribe consultations with the Council of States. But in this case, there is no such consultation. All the law simply prescribe is that the person shall, for the person to be qualified, these are the requirements that the person must possess. Simple. It's like a law saying that for you to gain admission into the university, you must have at least 5 credits in 2 sittings. And then somebody now has 5 credits in 4 sittings. You say no, that after all, he has 5 credits. That's not what the law says. So the law takes away discretion here. The law says, yes, you have the power to appoint. But in appointing, there are criteria you must consider. The person must be a serving or retired security person who has worked in government security and must attain the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police and must also have cognate experience. Cognate experience, let me use the word that the everyday person will understand. Related experience. Related experience means related experience in the field prescribed by the law. So if you now say cognate experience mean any experience like the president's men are trying to interpret, it means a plumber who went to school to read plumbing, graduated and had been working in EFCC or repairing plumbing work for EFCC for the past 15 years, he has cognate experience. It means a driver who is driving the chairman has cognate experience. It means a cleaner who has been cleaning in EFCC since inception has cognate experience. Is that the kind of intendment that the government or the presidency want us to assume that our laws have? The answer is no.
Well, Liberals, just before we let you go, we talked about setting agenda. So what would you say are the priority areas that Olukoyede must tackle immediately as the EFCC chairman, just very briefly?
First and foremost, when you appoint a chairman and there is crisis rocking the appointment, it means that you are not even ready to set agenda. You want to kill the agency. Because when you have a chairman who consistently has to look over his shoulders because people are in court arguing whether he has a required qualification, it means you don't even want the agency to work. That's on one side. And then on the issue of agenda, I think we need to even strengthen our policing. This idea of everything EFCC. Yes, it's a specialized arm of government investigating and prosecuting economic and financial crime. But you have a police that, is broad. And we just abandoned the police completely. And so we're not even looking in that direction. And we every day, you say you want to fight corruption and yet you have untouchables. You can't be fighting corruption and have untouchable and yet set an agenda for EFCC. It means that you don't even want the EFCC to work in the first place. All
right, on that note, Liberal Oshoma, legal practitioner, would like to thank you for your perspective on those issues. Always a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure always.